We're going to cover the worst types of debt that you can have if you don't have $10,000 saved, if you don't have $100,000 saved. And we're going to start with the easy, low-hanging fruit. Everybody's going to know this one, credit cards. Okay, now, if we're looking at credit cards, there's a couple different nuances I will bring up. This is going to be some type of consumer debt, right? So this is going to be charged at a 15 to 25% interest rate. And if you're not paying this back on a monthly basis, you're going to get absolutely slaughtered. You're going to be buying things that you don't need, and you're going to have to pay all of this stuff back. And over a long period of time, you're going to have a huge freaking hole dug, and you're going to be screwed. And the only way out of it is to figure out how to bust your butt and figure out some type of side hustle to actually pay that back. So there's a couple things. The nuance I'm going to bring up is that I don't dislike the idea of taking a credit card and saying, okay, if I take this credit card and I buy something like a lawnmower, a weed whacker, a wheelbarrow, something that we will use to then have money, okay? So to then make more money in a side hustle. But for the love of God, please, this has to be done with a strategic approach. So my first recommendation would be don't do that, okay? The biggest factor here is to just pay off the credit card debt. Do not have anything outside of that, and just try to start at a baseline before you actually set up that actual goal to buy something with a credit card to then make more money. Okay, so the big thing is to prove it to yourself right on the front end. Delete all credit card debt by doing this, by saving that money month over month, week over week, day over day. Get rid of that credit card debt and put restrictions on yourself with your spending. You can't go out to eat. You can't have Starbucks. You can't go on any trips. You can't buy a special car. None of that stuff matters. Okay, now the second big part around debt, when you're trying to save towards $10,000 or $100,000, the next big factor is to look at things that don't have collateral, that don't have equity buildup. Okay, so a lot of people, I didn't actually understand or know that people did this. I was fortunate that my parents did not do this. A lot of people will actually put things like a trip to another country on some type of credit card or on some type of loan. Okay, so they'll actually do that as a personal loan, and then they'll pay back. And it's great to have an experience. It's great to have those things. But then instead of, say, paying $2,000 for this trip to Tokyo, they're paying, $10,000, or maybe not that much, but $6,000 over a longer period of time. And there's no equity build into this. Okay, so there's zero value around that. Okay, so these are things that you should not be doing. I actually experienced an individual having a personal loan from somebody saying, I will buy this ticket to a concert for $200 plus pay for parking and buy anything else for you and raise this up to $300, but you have to pay me back $450. Don't do that. Guess what? You're not going to the concert. And I know it sounds crazy. It's only $150, but it's like, nah, it's $150 extra, plus it's another $300. So guess what you're not going to do? You're not going to go to the concert. You're not going to pay for parking. You're not going to do these things. You don't do that yet. Okay, that is a horrifically bad financial decision. If you don't have that money, you don't do that. We have to establish these goals of saving $10,000. Okay, we have to save the $100,000, and we have to set up the accounts accordingly once we get to these points. But the biggest lesson right off the bat, pay down the credit card. Okay, pay down that credit card debt, get rid of it. Okay, then the next aspect, you don't do any personal loans. Okay, you do zero personal loans. Now, I'm going to bring up a touchy subject here because the third aspect is going to be student loans. Okay, so a lot of people are paying $100,000, $150,000 plus on student loans. They're graduating, they're making 60 to 70K doing a job that's not related to their student loan. One way to prevent this from happening, if it hasn't happened yet, is to really think through, do I need a degree to do this? Do I need to pay for a degree to do this? If you're in a position where you're a musician or you're an athlete and you don't have to pay to go to school, that's a little bit of a different aspect because there's ways to make money when you're in school, there's ways to take care of things, and there's ways that the school can actually pay for your tuition. But if you're not in that situation and you don't really know what you want to do with your life, I recommend you don't take out debt. Okay, instead, you take a step back, and I would actually recommend watching our side hustle video, figuring out if there's specific things that you want to do, and then look for some type of gig or some type of job that you can make money, because then as you start to work and you start to mature in the workforce, you start to think through, like, what am I passionate about? What do I want to do that makes me happy? What do I want to have an impact on? Who do I want to impact? Okay, so we don't want to put ourselves behind the 8 ball before we even really know what we're going to do. Then we're paying back a loan, a student debt loan that's $150,000. It's $150, a month that you're constantly paying back for nothing, for no degree. And so that would be the third type of poor debt. Now, I will say, if you have in your mind what you can do, where you can go, what you want to be, and you have an ability to pay for that, I think that's a little bit different of a discussion, but I don't necessarily think that it's something that you should be doing right away. I think that you should be taking that step back and really thinking through. Now, if you're somebody who's made these decisions, okay, you've gone to college and you've wasted that time and money. It's a lot of time, and I was one of those individuals. You've made those decisions. The best thing that I can recommend now is to, when you get out of college, lay out where is my current debt. I've got my student loans. I've got a personal loan because I decided to go to Naples for spring break, and I was a college idiot. I didn't do that. But let's say you're one of those individuals. I went to a concert. I wanted to go to a music festival and hang out with my bros. And then I had a credit card debt that I would barely pay the minimum back on, and we would go out drinking. So you made these bad financial decisions. So you lay that out. Okay, so now we're looking at this from the super simple aspect. We can lay this out here, write this down, okay? Okay, this is my debt. This is the interest rate on each one. So you can look at the interest rate, and then you can look at what is the actual bill for each one. Okay, how much, and then how much is left to pay off. So you have, what is the balance? How much am I paying? How much am I paying in interest each pay period, usually each month? And then we can look at that and say, okay, the student loan debt is a little bit lower. So right off the bat, let's go, first off, let's pay credit card back as quickly as possible while paying a minimal amount on the student loan, while paying also likely a maximum amount on the personal loan. So the personal loan is the one for the spring break. So now you're laying that out. You've got these 3 types of high interest debt that you're paying back that really has minimal to zero collateral, minimal to zero equity that you're building. And now you can look at that and you can say, okay, I want to pay back the highest interest rate first, but I also want to pay back the personal loan. Maybe it's a little bit lower interest rate, but it has no equity. And so to do that, we have to think through, what is the extra money over here? Okay, so let's say now we have this job, we're making, let's say that we're making $4,500 to $5,000 a month, but our bills are $4,000, so we're only saving $1,000. Well, now we have to have a side hustle to figure out how we can pick off all of the debt over here as fast as possible. Okay, so we have the side hustle until the debt is paid off. I think this is one huge thing, is that everybody's like, well, I don't want to work an extra 10 hours a week. I don't want to have to work an extra 40 hours a month. If you want to have some type of financial freedom, you have to select a good side hustle that you can work with, and you have to figure out how you can make up for the bad decisions in the past that you were uninformed on. Most of these decisions you were basically forced into doing. A lot of kids just feel like they need to go to college because that's the norm. And so what we have to do then is commit and say, okay, I'm going to have a side hustle until I pay off the debt. I'm going to have a side hustle until I have $10,000 saved. I'm going to have a side hustle until I have 6 months saved of actual expenses in an emergency high yield savings account. So that's the process that you can work through, okay, to do this. But the big factor is the debt that we don't want. I'm going to keep this as simple as we can. The 3 big ones. You don't have credit card debt, you don't have personal loan debt, and you try to minimize the student loans. If anyone is watching this and they're in high school and they're thinking about going to college, do not, under any circumstances, go to college unless you 100% know what you're passionate about, or unless somebody is paying for you to go there for free, okay? Make sure you spend time. I recommend going into the workforce, getting a job, working full time, 40 hours a week, work full time, 40 hours a week. Try to take on paying your own bills like your cell phone bills and things like that. And you will figure out much faster. You will learn much quicker. You will mature much faster. You will figure out who you are at a much faster rate because you're starting to own those things early on. And that in turn could completely diminish your student loan debt. So that would be my big recommendations. Those are the 3 top things that we need to avoid when we have under $10,000 or $100,000 saved. I hope this video helped you guys get out of debt. Peace.